Academy Sports and Outdoors wants to thank teachers for everything you do. That's why they're giving you 10% off your entire purchase from July 31st to September 5th, just in time for back to school. So swing by your local Academy store or save online at academy.com on all the top brands like Nike, Adidas, and Freely. Don't wait. Start enjoying your special thanks and savings today. Teachers and school staff, please bring your school ID to receive your discount at checkout.
Fisherman's Post. More fish, more often.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Fisherman's Post Saltwater Podcast Series. This episode is titled Light Tackle Jigging on Nearshore Structure. I'm talking with friend Captain Mike Oppegaard of Native Sun Guide Service out of the Topsail area. We're going to be covering such areas as structure, tackle, target species, and techniques. My name is Gary Hurley of Fisherman's Post. Fisherman's Post has been serving the saltwater fishing community of North Carolina since 2003. We've been bringing you fishing reports, fishing information, fishing tournaments, fishing schools, and here in our latest and greatest effort, the Saltwater Podcast Series, where we reach out to our captain and guide friends from up and down the North Carolina coast and ask them to share with us their insights, their knowledge on how to catch more fish more often. In this project, I'm joined every week with my partner, Billy Thorpe of Thorpe Creative. Here we are, Billy, back at it, another podcast to be put together.
Oh, right there. I thought I changed there for a second. Man, I'm excited. I'm excited to have friend Mike. I like how you introduced him, friend Mike Oppegaard, Captain Mike Oppegaard. He's part of our weekly fishing reports, so get to spend quite a bit of time with him, and a great guy. So I'm excited for you guys' conversation, and hopefully you don't give each other too much of a hard time as you have pre-show and every other week that we talk to him. So I'm pretty excited about it, man. Excited about this episode as well, and want to shout out. We'll just get right into it, Gary. I'll just shout out our sponsor of the episode. We have, two sponsors. We got Academy Sports. As you guys saw, you can text that to get your coupon. And then Marine Warehouse Center, which has been with us since episode number 5, which is amazing. So here's a quick word from those guys, and we'll be right back.
At Marine Warehouse, we have everything from trailer parts, engines, engine parts, new boats, boat parts, a full store. We have a service department. We are your one-stop shop for marine equipment and hardware.
We offer a wide variety of parts and accessories for all your marine needs. The best part about working at Marine Warehouse Center is to help customers really get the most out of their coastal lifestyle and share our love for the water.
At Marine Warehouse, we're here to get you out on the water because of our love for the water. We like being out there, and we want you out there with us.
Boom! I heard that invite from Emmett that they want me out there with them. So
They do.
Just call me, Emmett. I'm out there with you.
Tell them I don't want to buy a boat. I just want to go on the boat with you guys.
Yeah, like I need friends who buy boats. I don't want to buy a boat.
Right.
I just need all of you listeners to buy a boat and invite me on it.
And if you are in the fishing boating community, though, man, you want a relationship with Marine Warehouse Center, sales, service, and parts. I mean, and here we are sort of in the late part of the summer. You know, go ahead and get that laundry list together of things you want addressed on your boat as we go into the fall season. Not the early fall season. I still want you on your boat. But maybe later in the season, start putting together that laundry list now so you don't forget anything. Take that laundry list in your boat to Marine Warehouse Center, and they'll take care of you.
Yeah, good crew over there. Really enjoyed those guys. And, man, they are hard workers. Emmett, I know I give him a hard time at times because he's been spending a little more time on the road and traveling. But this week, man, he's caught out in the wild, like doing business stuff. Like he shows up professional, and man, he is a hustler. He's out there working. So we're gonna play a little game, Gary, called "Where in the World is Emmett?" And I have a picture of where he is, but I'm gonna give you a couple hints and see if you can guess.
Where in the world is Emmett? I'm ready.
All right, so I don't know how to set this up, but he is in the midst of. He's being, with the gas prices rising, he's very mindful of that. And he's also doing some business meetings in a bigger city. So what is he doing in that bigger city?
He is riding a courier bike.
Something of that sort. So here is Emmett, dressed up in his business attire, and he's going to business meetings. He's trying to get better deals on bigger boats.
And saving gas money while he's doing it.
And saving gas money. Look at him.
He is dapper. Emmett is dapper Dapper Emmett.
Yeah, so for people listening, it's I've basically just photoshopped Emmett's face on some dude riding a bike wearing a suit holding I don't know, like a really expensive leather note holder or something, some kind of note bag. I don't know.
He's on his way to Starbucks.
Yeah, he definitely is. Definitely is. He needs a little bell on the bike. I'll remember that next time, Emmett. Get a little bell on the bike. But anyway, enough of our shenanigans. I don't know how they sponsor our show. All we do is make fun of them all the time, Gary.
Maybe if we made more fun of them, they would be a bigger sponsor.
Oh, you mean to crack like 5 jokes about you, Emmett, every show? You add one more zero? How many jokes for one more zero?
Man, one more. Let me put my brainstorming cap on for one more zero. I'm in on that challenge.
Oh, man, too much fun. Well, Gary, I'll show you a fish picture so we can move on and get to the good part of this podcast, which is going to be some fishing stuff. But here's a nice fish picture from Art Blakesley. Caught this amberjack using mullet while fishing out of Riceville Beach. And, man, that is a good-looking amberjack right there. So I don't know about good eating, but... Man, I'm like desperate to go to Mike. I'm desperate to get him on the screen. But yeah, good looking fish there. Appreciate you guys sending that in.
Yep, Nearshore Jigging. We're going to talk with Mike, and Nearshore fishing is within the parameter. And what I'm getting ready to talk about is Fisherman's Post's new project. It's weekly inshore fishing reports. It's really inshore, nearshore, though. And it is weekly, delivered behind a subscription paywall, audio and video delivery. If you haven't checked it out, you want to go to fishermanspost.com and then member content. There's information there. You can sign up there and you can access there a project we're very excited about. As Billy said in the beginning, Mike Oppegaard, who I'm talking with tonight, is one of 11 captains I talk with every week from up and down the entire North Carolina coast and get insight on inshore, nearshore, bait, changing conditions, how to address the changing conditions. Thoroughly enjoying the project.
Yeah, man, it's a lot of fun, dude. And it's a lot of fun to get these guys on every week and listen to what's going on the water. And it's live action. It's like a replay of Sports Week every week. So It's pretty cool.
And this is your friend Mike as well. So I'm expecting you to pay attention to Mike for Billy's best takeaway. That's Billy's best takeaway.
Mike and I are so tight, he already sent me a takeaway before the show.
He sent you a cheat sheet.
He said, Billy, I want you to just relax, enjoy yourself. I know Gary's working you over there too hard, so.
Have him send you some questions, and I'll just dip out for this 30 minutes, and you guys can talk.
Dude, we would definitely talk. I don't know if we talk about fishing, but we talk about something.
Well, let's bring him on. Captain Mike Oppegaard, Native Sun Guide Service out of the Topsail area, talking about light tackle jigging on nearshore structure. Welcome to the show, Mike. Always look forward to talking to you.
Thank you, Gary. If they only knew what happened before the cameras came on, right?
Right. That's a different tier membership. You got to pay pretty hefty for that behind the scene insight. But man, you've done this show. You've done the show a couple of times. You know the gig. Before we can talk about light tackle jigging on nearshore structure, you got 2 questions. You're ready? I start.
Go.
Question number 1. Why should we listen to anything you have to say about light tackle or jigging or nearshore fishing, any of it?
Well, it's one of the things I've done. We've got so many guides in the water now. I've always kind of done something a little different, and this kind of nearshore jigging is one of the things I've always done. It goes back to when we were kids, gray trout fishing, back in the 80s. And it's a great way to catch fish. And, sometimes the beach can kind of get crowded and you got all those people in their boats wanting to tow inner tubes and stuff, and everybody's in the marsh. It's a great way to get away from everybody and kind of, have some time to yourself.
Man, fantastic answer. Easily, we're moving on to question number 2. And as you know, question number 2 is a non-fishing related question. Here we go. As you know, I am a big fan of how you spell your last name. I mean, a huge fan. And so what I'm asking you to do, are you able to give me any other word with 2 A's in a row? Mike Oppegaard has Gaard. Any other word with 2 A's in a row?
I don't think so. I'm trying real hard. I can't think of one with 2 A's in a row without, picking up my phone and going to the computer.
Aardvark.
Aardvark. Okay. What else?
Bizarre.
Yeah.
Not bizarre, but a bazaar. the place.
So what are you trying to say there about me, Gary?
That not
Odd
too
and
many
bizarre?
people think it's a good idea to put two A's in a row.
Well, I agree with you, but the Norwegian spelling's kind of a little hard in English, so that's what I'm stuck with.
Well, let's talk fishing. Enough of double A's. Let's talk
Double A's
fishing.
and double P's. Yeah, all those damn vowels and consonants. Good God.
I like the way you set it up. I mean, if we're going to talk about nearshore structure, let's get a great understanding of structure. You're talking to us about the topsail area, but certainly this will be applicable up and down the North Carolina coast. So give us a primer on structure as Mike Oppegaard knows it.
All right, when I'm going to define structure, there's a couple different types. There's obvious, what we call live rock, live bottom. Here in North Carolina, we've got places of the seabed that was exposed. It exposed to the bedrock, that limestone substrate. You get stuff growing on it, all the kelps and seagrasses and stuff. That attracts the bait fish. The bait fish attract the bigger fish. Then the other side of that is maybe some of the kelp beds. There are some places where we've got like a hard shell bottom with kelp on it. That'll hold fish certain times of the year. That's another kind of structure. The easiest way to really think about it is it's our inlets coming out the inlet, going down the beach. As you work your way out, a lot of it is hard sand, just plain hard sand. And these are places where it's not, there is actually something there on the bottom, whether it be like we call that live rock or kelp or something like that, something that's going to hold bait there. And that's really what we're looking for when we think of structure. It's not so much, hey, this is a 6-foot ledge or whatever. That is true, but it holds bait. And that's the reason why we're there more than anything, is it gives the bait somewhere to hide. Therefore, the bait congregates there. Therefore, the predators come and look for the bait there.
So I was going to ask on like the kelp beds or on the hard sand bottom. So how does that show up differently on my bottom reader on my screen? If I'm over top of a sunken ship, easy to pinpoint. All right, I'm
That's
here.
Obvious.
But what about this live bottom?
Modern electronics really have kind of come into play. It's not the old graph machine or the old paper machine that we remember as kids. Right now, basically, a lot of what I've got is, your side scan sonars, your whatever Garmin's version is, but the Simrad version, the side scan sonar, you can actually distinguish the rock and the ledge and the faces of the rock. So it's pretty easy to see. The best thing to do is to go get, I know Maps Unique has a chart, and I think Fish Anywhere or Fish Here or something like that's got a chart. Go get the charts. Go find the obvious public bottom, whether it be, the Liberty Ship or Dallas Rock or Surf City Rocks or, just the obvious public bottom that everybody has. Turn on your electronics and learn how to look at the bottom. Years ago, I did a little bit of self-experimentation and actually dropped a GoPro over and was filming the bottom as I was taking it on the sonar. And that really helped a lot as far as your interpretation of what the sonar is telling you. And it's kind of neat to see some of the stuff down there. I do that stuff kind of in January when we're slow, so I really don't want to put on a suit and go overboard to see it. But you can go down there with a GoPro and film it. Or, like I said, if you go to a known structure, you can sit there and look at the structure and then use that to extrapolate what it looks like in other places. That's the best way to find it. There is no shortcut to that stuff. You really kind of have to go first, find the public bottom, understand what you're looking at, and then, start to make a circular pattern around it. There's always, the neat thing about all the artificial reefs in North Carolina is they didn't just put them out in a desert. A lot of those places where they planted the artificial reef, take, for instance, what we call the tire reef here off Jolly Roger Pier. I don't know which number it is. I'm not very good with those, but we called it the tire reef. It's off the Jolly Roger Pier. Originally it was tires, and then they started dumping some concrete culverts, and now they're dumping reef balls. And it all shows up different on your machine. It's a great place to go look and start and say, hey, this is what it looks like. And also, it's there for a reason, because outside of the litter zone or the debris field or whatever you want to call it, there's other pieces of natural bottom, and that's the reason why they put it there to begin with. So it gives you a good snapshot of what to look for and how to look for it. And that's the best, easiest way you can really kind of learn. And once you learn, then, slow trolling for king mackerel, even up to 6 knots, 7 knots. If you're trolling for Spanish, go pick you a depth and go look, and you'd be surprised what you can find. We've got a plethora of it. A lot of it's not necessarily on somebody else's chart, but there is a ton of it out there you can find.
Man, I follow everything you said. So here's my other follow. I mean, that's insightful. And here's my other question. So when you're talking structure in general, or when you're talking structure for the purpose of this podcast, you're not talking about where like a 6-foot drop or a 4-foot drop.
Yeah, obviously but those are so obvious. I mean, the problem with some of those really big ledges, everybody knows they're there. So if you think about it, over a week, at least 6 or 7 boats are hitting that same piece of structure. And if that's all you have, then by all means, go learn, do that, because you can still catch fish there. I'm not saying you can't catch fish there. I'm just saying that as you get better at finding that 6-foot ledge, realize that there's other pieces of structure out there that only may be 1.5 2 foot, or it may not be a piece of structure. It may be a grass bed, and all that stuff shows up on your machine differently and actually shows you what that structure looks like. And you can get really good at discerning whether or not you need to be in this area or go somewhere else. And really, like I said, modern electronics and modern mapping has really taken a lot of guesswork out of it. It's not the old days. I remember Grandpa would come out the inlet, run down the beach, and line a tree up with a house and run a compass course at X RPMs for so many minutes, and we'd stop and fish. And by golly, there were always fish there. But now we've got the beauty of GPS and all that other stuff. It's a great tool. You just have to learn to use it, and it's going to take some time to learn how to use it.
Okay, and then on to continue this structure conversation just a little bit more for the purposes of light tackle jigging. Are you a bigger fan of like hard bottom with kelp and natural growth over something like tires and concrete abutment?
I don't think it matters. I've had some really good divers tell me that the flounder will actually lay on top of those reef balls. That they'll, back when the flounder season was open a little bit more, those guys told me that they would actually go down and spear flounder off the top of the reef ball. I don't think it matters. I think it's just a fact of something there to attract the bait. Yeah, obviously I tend to like the natural stuff a little bit more because that's not on everybody's GPS. I don't necessarily think it's any better. I just think it's off the beaten path, if that makes any sense. And, the one tip I would give you is that, once you find that piece of structure and go, okay, hey, there's a ledge here. Obviously, as you ride around and look around that ledge, you'll see other little teeny pieces of structure that somebody else may not have seen. And then that is where you can typically do a little bit better because, there haven't been 10 boats there this week at Dallas Rock dropping a jig to catch black bass or a grunt or whatever.
Right on. And then I think this is my final question in this area would be your definition of nearshore. How far are we talking specifically out of your topsail inlets?
I thought real hard about that. To me, I think that nearshore stuff, I've got some stuff in 25, 30 feet. And then for me, typically in the bay boat, I'll run out 70 feet or so. If I'm running 70 in the bay boat, chances are there's no wind. It's a gorgeous day. I spend a lot of time in 35 feet to 60 feet. And I know that's a wide swath because you're talking probably anywhere from 8, 9 miles off the beach, right? So, but that to me, that near shore to me, that's kind of what I'm thinking is, can I reach it in the bay boat? I'm not the big 27 center console. I'm not going 20, 30 miles off the beach. I'm in that near stuff. And that's kind of where that whole near shore jigging came from.
Right on. Hey, what about tackle? This might be a good time to talk tackle because I think you've hit a home run on structure.
Well, to me, and this is again, we're not offshore, right? So I'm not throwing 8-ounce knife jig for amberjack, and we do catch some amberjacks. We do catch a bunch of cobia doing this, but it's a thing where I'm thinking more light tackle. I want my clients to have fun. I don't want. This is bad. I don't necessarily want them to take a 4/0 cylinder, drop it to the bottom, and just crank. I want, this is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be, you're meat fishing, but you're not meat fishing, if that makes any sense. So I typically stay away from chicken rigs. A lot of what I use is this right here. Let's see, go that way. There we go. A 2-ounce jig. A 2-ounce, this is just a 2-ounce jig, simple, plain. I think that's a 1/0 hook. I'll do anything with it. I'll pair it with like diesel minnows from Z-Man. Let me see if I can get that in the screen. It's backwards. There we go. Diesel minnows from Z-Man. I'll pair it with the semi paddle Z's from Z-Man. Stuff like that. I find that works great. The disadvantage of not using squid is that I catch less grunts. And we all know grunts this time of year is a great food fish. So I tend to throw a little bit more squid in the heat of the summer because I don't catch as many grunts on soft plastic. You can catch a lot of black bass on soft plastic. You can catch a lot of grouper on soft plastics. But I have a hard time catching the grunts on soft plastic. So I tend to throw a lot of squid, say July and August, and then I'll transition into more soft plastic as we get into the winter and the fall. Those are the things I do the most of. Obviously, go ahead and pair it with some good old-fashioned Procure. We can get into the debate about Gulp versus Z-Man. I tend to like Z-Man a lot better because I feel like I can catch a lot more fish without having to constantly put new bait on. That's me. I understand the guys from the Gulp standpoint, and it works. I'm not going to say that it doesn't. I tend to go with the Z-Man and the Procure. But, a jig head like this, 2-ounce bucktail, everybody who's ever flounder fished before has used a Spro 2-ounce bucktail. It works. There's nothing wrong with that. Some other stuff. I know Blue Water Candy makes one, the Cobia jig. I think its hook is just a touch big, but it certainly works very well. The good old blade jigs like this, just the good old blade jigs work as well too. That and, for years as kids, we always used to use the good old diamond jigs, the cheap diamond jigs. Every tackle store's got them, for gray trout and stuff. And then, as the gray trout kind of eased away, a lot of us started trying to catch other things with them. I like soft plastic. I think it does well. Obviously, part of the conversation we're having right now is we're going to talk about flounder and how I think, it works for flounder. I personally prefer soft plastic with Procure for flounder. To me, I think it's the go-to bait for me, at least. I know live bait works as well. I also feel that sometimes with live bait, I'm catching so much trash that it makes it more difficult to keep a jig in the water on the bottom. When a flounder hits a soft plastic, you've got a fish. How about if that makes any sense to anybody?
Sure, man. I'm following that. So you've unpacked a lot, and I've got a few circle rounds. I'm actually going to back it up before I even start circling around. So on your boat for the light tackle, and I certainly understand your philosophy about not wanting a 4/0 Senator. So are you preferable to 3,000, 4,000, 2,500?
Yeah, actually, I got one right here, Gary.
What's your rod choice?
So that's a quantum. I throw all quantum reels, and I think that's a 3,000. I tend to use a little bit more towards a 4,000, but I think this can get done with the 3,000. Obviously, I'm throwing I'm an ambassador for TFO. I'm a brand ambassador, so obviously everything I'm throwing is TFO. They make it extra heavy. This is a 2-ounce blank that's really good. They also make a heavy, which is 1.5 ounces that I'll cheat up to a 2-ounce with. I really think that light spinning rod is great because if you are going to be jigging all day, there's nothing worse than, after that first hour or so, your arm gets sore. And, so I try to keep it as light as I can so that my clients don't get tired and they're constantly, if you drop the bait on the bottom and you're not jigging, then you're not doing what you should do. So you want a light rod, that can carry 2 ounces because 2 ounces is kind of heavy for what we would typically use inshore for drum and that kind of stuff, right? I'm generally, an 1/8 ounce blank is kind of where I am. But something real simple. You don't have to have a lot of drag. Contrary to what a lot of people think, if you ever try to reel in something with a 20-pound drag, you'd be surprised how heavy 20 pounds is. If go grab 2 bags of ice. That's a lot of drag. So for me personally, 3,000, 4,000, light spinning rod, something that'll carry the weight so you're not constantly overworking the rod. And I think that's all you really need. 20, 30-pound fluorocarbon. I tend to use 30, especially on the rocky stuff, because I feel like it gives me a little bit better abrasion resistance.
All right. And are you using braid or mono, and what size braid?
Oh, braid. The old days, we all used mono and it stretched. It amazes me how much better I can feel the bite, how much better I can feel the bottom. Um, once you start doing this a little bit, you'll actually get to the point where you can feel the jig actually on the rock and then go off the rock and then go back on the rock. So it's really important to be able to feel what's happening because it's 40 feet below you. Sure, the electronics are telling you what's there, but it's nice to be able to kind of feel it. So certainly braid. 20-pound test is probably plenty. 20 to 30, that's probably where I would come in at there.
All right. Now, I still have some more questions on the tackle. What length leader of that 20 or 30-pound fluoro, what length leader? And then I'm also always curious, like whether you're using that 2-ounce jig head or you're using a Spro bucktail, what knot are you tying? Are you tying something that allows that, like a loop knot that allows that jig to move around more loosely, or are you tying it sort of synced in?
I'll tie an arm's length, which is basically 6 foot of leader. Um, and I'm lazy, and the reason I tie 6 foot a leader is I know for a fact if we're doing this the way we should, we are going to get hung up and lose jig heads. It's just a nature of the business. It's going to happen. One tip I can give you there is to try to keep your jig as vertical as possible to the boat. A lot of people want to throw out and jig back. You will get hung up more. Remind me of that. And we'll talk about that when we get into a little more flounder specific species stuff. So 6 foot double uni is what I tie mine with. I can do an FG knot, but double uni seems to work just as good for me. And yes, I do tie a loop knot. I use a Canoe Man's loop knot. It's the one that Mark Nichols at DOA taught me in a seminar 20 years ago, and I still use it. So jump online there, and you can certainly see that knot, and it works great. I think the loop does give it a little bit more swing as you're bouncing up and down.
All right. I mean, I've followed everything, and now I'm going to move on. But instead of just sort of asking questions about some of the soft plastics and offerings you displayed on camera, I think I'm going to push you to do a little bit of target species talking. Now, in our pre-show notes, it was grunts, black sea bass, and flounder. So I'm of a frame of mind to finish with flounder since it's our short season. And again, meat fishing without truly meat fishing because it's light tackle. I love that description of it as too. You take a pick. I don't know how different they are, grunts or sea bass, or we talk about them together, and tell me about how you would put me on one.
Grunt, sea bass, and grouper for that matter, all kind of tend to hang out in the same area. The black bass to me, and it could be just the nature of our schools, the black bass inshore are so much thicker. We've got tons and tons of 11 to 12 inch fish. Trying to find that 13-inch fish, again, if you think about what we were talking about earlier about public bottom and how that gets hammered every day, there's only so many of those 13-inch fish on that piece of bottom. And, if everybody's going to that same piece, it's harder and harder to get that. I think black bass to me on the screen, at least when you look at them, it's more of a mass on the bottom. Grunts are similar to that to me. I think the grunts tend to kind of hang a little bit more tighter to the structure. Maybe that's what I'm going to say is maybe. Really, like I was saying there earlier, for me this time of year, because I am targeting more grunts than black bass because it's so hard to get a keeper here in the heat of the summer, black bass wise, I tend to use a lot of squid. I'll come right to the rocks, spot lock on the trolling motor. We can talk about that too. Spot lock on the trolling motor and bounce around that rock. Jog forward 10 feet, jog over 10 feet, jog back 10 feet, jog over 10 feet, and just jog around that rock until I find what I'm looking for. Usually if you find one in some of these little rocks that I'm fishing, if we find one, I may stay a little bit longer, but chances are one or two, that's it. You need to move. I know that's crazy because offshore guys will get a bite going and they'll stay there for hours and hours and hours. For me, I feel like we don't have enough bottom to really support a large population. So I'm actually going to, it's all one big rock complex. Let's say Dallas Rock. It's all one big rock complex. But I'm hitting one specific spot for 5 minutes, and then moving a little bit, maybe even as far as 20, 30 feet and hitting another rock and then moving and hitting another rock. And I just constantly bounce around those rocks. And that's really kind of how I black bass and grunt fish. And, while you're doing this, especially this time of year, always keep a big rod out. Big rod, 8,000 spinning reel, heavy duty rod. bucktail, or another soft plastic, because the cobia, at least for me, if I'm out there catching little fish and jigging, it's not unusual to have those big cobia come up to check out the boat and see what all the action is. And that's always a great way to pick up cobia. I know that the guys north of us like to really sight fish for them, but for me, it seems like I do a lot better just not really sight fishing for them, but just let them be a target of opportunity.
All right. Man, I'm on board. As far as squid for the grunts and the sea bass, what's the vehicle that you're delivering that squid? Is it on a jig head?
Bucktail, same jig head.
But no soft plastic. You're not tipping a soft plastic.
No, no. Without a soft plastic, I'll use a jig head. And I do that for a couple reasons. This tends to have a longer hook, so I get better purchase when I'm trying to unhook it for my clients. They are extremely cheap. I mean, maybe not as cheap as a mustad hook and a sinker, but they are pretty damn cheap. A lot of times you can cheat and add a bucktail on the bottom and then come up, say, 2-3 feet and, add a trailer hook off of that, tie a barrel knot or whatever you want to call it, dropper knot, and tie another hook and put 2 pieces of squid down, kind of a light tackle version of a chicken rig. I tend to just use 1 piece of squid on a jig head like this, and it keeps everything clean and simple. I get less hangups that way, and it works. So I haven't had really much desire to change from that.
Chunk of squid or strip of squid? Something that's sort of dangles or something that's just close to the hook?
Strip. I tend to process my own wings. What I'll do is I'll slice those wings in probably a 3 to 4 foot strip, ½ inch wide, maybe about a ½ inch wide, and then I will lay it out on a piece of hardware cloth, salt the hell out of it, let it dry a little bit, salt it again, and then pack it in the freezer. So Texas Tackle sells flats of squid wings, so I'll go grab a couple of flats of squid wings, and that way I always have some in the freezer.
And then what does the piece look like that you put on the hook? Is it like a ½ inch by 3?
Inch wide, 3-4 inches long. Yeah, it's a ½ inch wide, 3-4 inches long, and I'll hook it once and then turn it and hook it twice. So I've got the hook purchase through the squid twice, and it is really that damn simple. It just don't overthink it and make it think that it's some kind of finessey thing. It is as simple as it goes. It's a great thing to do with your kids too.
So, man, that's a great segue. I was getting ready to ask whether you got, you in the business often have new to fishing people on the boat, or you have kids on the boat. So how do they do with setting the hook? I mean, as far as like getting bites and yanking on it too early, or, how do you help your people actually hook the fish to bring them up once you've put them in the right spot and put the right stuff in their hands?
I really don't have a problem with that. Unfortunately for me, inshore fishing, it seems like a lot of my newbies want to be Bill Dans and just rear back and set the hook. And sometimes when you're trout fishing or drum fishing, especially throwing topwater for a drum, the last thing you want to do is to rear back and set the hook, because if the drum misses it, you've pulled it out of the strike zone by 6-7 feet. This is a situation where you say, hey, you get a bite, you feel a big bite. That's something to talk about is, a lot of times when we're fishing this stuff, we're fighting the pinfish, the ringtails, the tomtates, all the little trash fish you could possibly imagine, oyster toads, lizard fish, all that stuff is there. So everything is constantly tapping at that piece of squid, and just eventually they can pick up real quick, hey, that's a big bite. And when you feel that big bite, just give it a short jerk and reel a little bit. If he's not on there, drop it back down. And the other thing I always tell them is, if you're not getting those little bites, the taps and everything, chances are you don't have bait. Reel up. Let's check your bait. I mean, it is bone dry simple, and that's the beauty of it is it's not necessarily a advanced technique. Is as simple as putting something on the bottom for them to eat.
All right, I think I have one more question, then we might move on to flounder. So my potential last question, I reserve the right to ask another question. My potential last question is, if it's not the heat of summer and I say, Mike, you're going to try to put me on some grunts and some sea bass, not in the heat of summer, and I'm not going to let you use squid. I'm going to make it an artificial game. What is in your opinion, best artificial for grunt, best artificial for sea bass?
Same thing, soft plastic, just soft plastic on the bottom. Take your pick. I mentioned those diesel minnows, those 5 inch, over the 5 inch or are they 6? These are 5 inch. for the 5-inch diesel minnow and the 6-inch dirt shad, uh, even a 6-inch gulp, all that stuff is to me one of the easiest things to use if you're not going to use natural bait. It works, and I mean it really works good. Um, you know, we'll segue into the flounder thing. One of the things about fishing this way for flounder is I'm going to catch keeper black bass. Like I said, I tend to catch less squid on soft plastic. I mean, less grunts on soft plastic, but I certainly catch a lot of black bass on soft plastic. So, in the fall after flounder season, we'll just basically throw a lot of soft plastics and just go pound away and catch what we can catch. It's a great thing to do. Um, Flounder wise, I am very hardcore soft plastic. I will throw bait every once in a while. I think live bait works well. Um, as the season has changed and the technique for flounder has changed because of the short season, I really like a soft plastic like I was talking about. Something to talk about there is we talked about the black bass and grunts I tend to find on top of the structure. I mentioned, actually finding the flounder on top of the reef balls. I also want to make sure that I work the soft sandy areas around that hard structure. So when I pull on structure and jig, before I leave, I'm going to actually, we said fishing vertically. Remember, we said that too. This is one of the few times I know I'm going to lose rigs this way, but I'll turn around and throw away from the structure, let the soft plastic sink all the way to the bottom, and then jig it back a couple of times just to check. A lot of times that school of flounder may not be actually in the hard stuff, but maybe on the soft sand right next to it, because that way they can attack bait and then go back to the sand and camouflage themselves. So think of it that way too. When I talk flounder and I'm talking structure like that, sometimes with the flounder I have found, it's not necessarily on the hard structure. They are, but before you leave, cast the areas around it, all the soft sandy stuff, and make sure that they're not sitting out there in the sand instead of the structure.
And if I'm throwing soft plastic, is your preferred for flounder now, because we're full on in the flounder conversation now, jig head soft plastic or Spro bucktail soft plastic?
I use a jig head soft plastic. I have no problem with the Spro whatsoever. I think they're very, very effective. Me being a cheap guide, H&H Lures in Louisiana makes my 2-ounce jig heads, and I can't remember the price on them, but it's way, way cheaper than a Spro. And if I'm going to put a soft plastic on there, I don't think the bucktail makes that much difference. And the reason I don't think it makes that much difference is in the old days when we were all throwing Spros, you were still throwing a Spro even though all the bucktail got chewed off. So, and it was still working. So I don't think the actual bucktail part of it is that big of a difference. So straight soft plastic is what I've really gone to now more than anything.
All right. And when you put a jig head soft plastic in my hand and we're over top of the structure, and maybe before I'm casting out and bringing it back, what is the jigging instruction you give to your clients? Like how do you tell them the best? Like a little bit of time on the bottom, more time on the bottom, big jerk, walk me through the instructions.
I kind of, set the jig on the boat and demonstrate. I really want to go, up a foot, foot and a half, and then touch the bottom, and then up a foot and a half, touch the bottom. To me, that seems to work the best. That's kind of how I do it. As you throw out, you let it touch the bottom. And, again, with the braid, you actually feel it touch the bottom. So you're on the bottom. So that's kind of how I do it is I kind of, let it touch the bottom, come up a foot, foot and a half, let it touch the bottom. I don't think, and I could be wrong, depending. I know a lot of people like to jig maybe a little bit stronger, maybe 3 feet off the bottom and back, 3 feet off the bottom and back. I think that may work better if you're drifting as opposed to anchored down with the trolling motor. I think anchored down with the trolling motor, certainly for me at least, the 1.5 foot, just pick it up, set it down, pick it up and set it down, works a lot better for me.
So does that mean spot lock works a lot better for you than drifting? Are you more let's hold in space, or do you like to drift?
I am a spot lock guy. I hope somebody would come out and give Minn Kota some competition, but yes, I am a spot lock guy. I think that the spot lock, us younger guys, the old guys used to carry us fishing, and all it was for is just to pull the anchor. And the spot lock has really changed that drastically over the years. I like the spot lock because it lets me actually dissect a piece of structure how I want to dissect it, depending on which way the wind and tide are going. And, a lot of times with an anchor, I'm going to swing one way or swing the other. A spot lock, I can pretty much stay where I want to stay. And if I'm not getting anything there, I can move. I'm a spot lock fiend, I reckon is the best way to put it.
All right. So to go back to the jigging action, when you say 1.5 feet, let it touch the bottom, am I letting it rest on the bottom, or is it literally just a touch of the bottom and then go back to another jig?
I always, a 1 second count. Touch bottom 1001, come back up. Touch bottom 1000. It's the action of the jig that I think is attracting the fish more than the actual scent and everything else associated with the jig. So I want as much movement as I can get. And I don't think the time on the bottom, whether it's a second or 2 seconds, matters as much because and I know that after you've been doing it for a couple hours, your jigging gets a lot slower anyhow. We still catch fish. So, but yeah, I kind of, let it touch the bottom, give it a good second, back up, touch the bottom, good second, back up, touch the bottom. And again, with spot lock, I'm doing that in a spot for maybe a minute or so, and then I'm moving 10 feet and doing it for a spot there until I find some kind of pattern. And especially with flounder, if you can find a pattern and go, okay, we were talking about the soft bottom next to the hard rock or on top of the hard rock. If you find one, chances are they're, offshore like this, there are way more there than just one. So, once you catch that first one, stay there. Work that bottom good before you move because chances are there's more than just one there.
Okay. Now, as far as your flounder bites when you're jigging, what percentage of those bites come when the jig is on the bottom? What percentage of those bites come on the jig up? What percent come on the fall?
That's a good question, Gary. I think a lot of them come on the fall. I'll go as high as 70, 80%, I think, go on the fall. And my reason for that is a lot of the less experienced clients I take will be jigging, and they'll let that slack go in their line when it hits the bottom, and then they lift it up, and all of a sudden they've got a flounder on it. So that leads me to believe that at least 70% of my stuff is on the fall. I really do think it's on the fall.
Okay. Man, I think we've covered it, but I don't want to move on or, call it a podcast unless you tell me.
Gary, I think that's it. I mean, one of the reasons I really want to talk about it with you is it is just so simple, and it's a great way, especially in the summertime, get the kids out, let them go catch fish. And, like we were talking, all that trash fish is still fish that they're going to reel in. And so, by golly, go do it. And that way everybody's having fun. And, in the meantime, we're now mid-July here at this podcast. So it might be time to really kind of start thinking about that live bottom flounder season. I'm not going to encourage anybody to specifically target a flounder just because I don't want the dead discard rate to rise. We're trying to build the population. But it's a pretty daggone good time to maybe poke around some of that live bottom and see what you see. Obviously, as we get closer to the opening date, I can promise you I'll be doing that.
And so I think I do have one last question. And it was, I understand the mentality about, a cobia swimming up to the boat, especially if you're stirring up the bottom or bringing fish around or just in their zone. When you're doing this nearshore jigging, are you ever putting like just a light line out? Or are you ever just letting anything float on the surface?
I call that the entertainment rod. Yes, I call that the entertainment rod. That is either a popping cork or maybe a balloon, usually a popping cork with about 6 foot leader, a big split shot, and a piece of live bait, and throw it back there while you're doing everything. And the reason I call it the entertainment rod is because it's back behind the boat, out of the way. You really don't pay attention to it until the drag goes. And it always amazes me the stuff that you can catch, not trying to catch it, just sitting there jigging the bottom. And that's a great point, Gary. I forgot to mention that. That's really good. Yeah, that's my entertainment rod. We always have an entertainment rod out, almost always.
What most often takes the entertainment rod? And then give me a couple of oddities that have taken the entertainment rod.
Cobia will take the entertainment rod. That's usually a really good. Obviously, you're going to catch sharks, and you're going to catch anything from the spiny dogfish up to the black tips and the spinners. I've had some mahi that way, and I'm talking about 3 miles, 4 miles off the beach, catching dolphin. That'll happen. It happens enough, especially in the heat of the summer, to make it kind of a regular thing. So it's not that odd, but I always do think it's funny that I'm inside the land catching a mahi. We've hooked a sail that way. Had him just enough for a jump or two, and that was it. We were done. But I mean, we were. I think in this, we might have been 4 miles off the beach in this spot. And let's see what else. Hooked a tarpon that way. You're obviously going to hook a bunch of kings, a bunch of large Spanish, depending on how big of a piece of bait you put out. So, again, while you're doing that, that's a great point. Put something out and do that.
Any final thoughts, Mike? This was, very informative. I do think you did a great job covering everything. But before I say goodbye, I'll give you the floor one last time.
I can't think of anything else. I've covered everything, basically what I do. This is, this time of year, June, July, and August is we've talked about it. I call it my mom, dad, and the kids season. And we do a lot of jigging like this during this time of year. And it's a great way to, grab something to eat. I hate to, you guys hear me talk on the weekly reports all the time. Yeah, I do a lot of Spanish fishing, but sometimes I just get tired of it. And this is a great way to really mix it up. Or, if you go early in the morning, you catch enough Spanish to go, hey, at least we've got supper. Let's go do something else. This is a great substitute to really kind of add some spice to your day without having to get really heavy into it.
Captain Mike Oppegaard, thank you. Native Son Guide Service out of the Topsail area. Always a good time talking to you. Always a good time
Thanks,
when we cross paths.
A lot. I hope you guys have a good week.
You too, man. Billy.
All right, Gary.
Good friend, Captain Mike Oppegaard. What was Billy's best takeaway?
I knew that was going to be a good episode. I just knew it was. He crushes it every week, so I knew it was going to be good. I'm always the person when somebody says something multiple times, I say this all the time, I just listen. And so when he's talking about the spot lock, getting in the spot, and if you have spot lock, if not, take a young person with you and let them throw the anchor and, and figure out how to keep you there. Maybe with like a little oar or something as well. But yeah, man, I think, like getting in that one spot, dissecting it, and then when you find flounder, like just stay there. And then he started talking about that entertainment rod. I'm like, God, that sounds real fun too. Like maybe all of these are entertainment rods. We're going to crack up in a cold one and sit around and see what happens.
Why are we working? Why aren't they all entertainment? Good point.
Yeah, why are these not all entertainment rods? Like, why am I jigging? So
that's great. Yeah, well, I tell you what, man, you need a spot lock. Emmett and Marine Warehouse Center, when you finally pull the trigger and buy that boat, Emmett and Marine Warehouse Center will probably make sure you have a spot lock on board.
Call me Billy Spot Lock. All right, there we go. For a kayak, I'll put it on.
All right.
And really appreciate Marine Warehouse Center and Academy Sports for sponsoring this episode. Go support them when you can, and we'll see you guys next week. Gary, thanks, man. It was a great episode.
Fisherman.